My name is Simeon Quarrie. I'm the founder of Vivida. We use storytelling to help everyone understand the subject of cybersecurity because I was originally a victim of cybercrime. And we want to make sure that no individual, no business falls for the same mistakes. I think the first most important thing is to understand that as small businesses, cyber is a real risk for us, i.e. criminals are actually trying to penetrate us as small businesses. And in fact, we may often think that it's the large businesses that are up, they're after, because there's these huge rewards. There's so much money in these large organizations. But what tends to happen is large organizations tend to have better defense and they're really aware of those security risks. But for smaller businesses, actually, for an opportunistic criminal, we end up having less security. So I think the first thing to do is actually to understand that small businesses like us are directly affected. I got involved in the subject of cybersecurity because the subject didn't matter to me until my credit card details were either stolen, used, and my bank account was empty, and then it mattered a lot. So once you understand that the subject is important, the key thing then is just do a little bit of research, just to start to understand the basics of what cyber security means. The reality is that it's actually quite similar to road safety. There are a few simple principles that as you're traveling, either in the vehicle or if you're walking and trying to cross the road, right, there are just a few things like being on the lookout for the risks that are there so that you can move easily and freely. Now, what that means in the world of cybersecurity, or I should say really just digital safety, what that means is looking out for the risks. One of those big risks that tends to happen is cyber criminals often use emails as a method to reach out to you, or sometimes it's the telephone call or it's the text message. And what these criminals like to do, see, my phone's just gone then. What these criminals like to do is they like to catch you off guard, put you under so much pressure that you need to respond to an email, respond to a call, and they trick you into giving away a piece of information that you don't want to give away, or they trick you into clicking onto something, and behind the scenes that then starts to give them access to your systems. So just like with road safety, look left, look right. That might mean the simple things of when you look at an email or a text message communication, or on the telephone, does this seem reasonable, this request? Does it seem sensible? Like a lot of safety is common sense. Another tip is that most people tell you that, you need to make sure that you've got really good passwords. I know for me, my first password was made back when I was in college, and I kept that password for the next 10 years until I knew better and learned better. So what we aim to do now is we aim to have as many passwords as we can for different sites. The reason being is if, for example, I use a shopping site and I create my password based on my initials and a couple of numbers, and then I use that same password on my social media, on my online banking, on my other accounts. Once the cyber criminals got into that weak website, they then run rampant with that password saying, I've got it. And they then start to use it and gain access to everything else. So to protect yourself, create different passwords for different sites. Minimizes that risk. Another key tip that can help, like trying to remember all these different passwords becomes really difficult. One thing I didn't realize is that you can actually now start to create what we call passphrases. So if we were to create a phrase, often that's easier for us to remember than something that's really complicated. So create an actual phrase, i.e. words, a sentence that includes spaces, includes exclamation marks, apostrophes. And in that way, you just remember key phrases that are much easier for you to remember. First thing, remember, there's no one thing that you can do to keep yourself safe online. Like when you are trying to cross a road or travel down the road, you're having to look left, you're having to look right, you're having to understand those risks. take time to understand the basics of what cybersecurity is, i.e., what are those risks? Bear in mind that there is no one way to be secure and safe online. Just like crossing the road and traveling down the road, we have to be aware of the different risks and take different actions to be able to minimize that risk. So what we mean by that, for example, one, be aware of how to and be aware of the different risks. One of those risks can be that we know we've heard cyber criminals try and gather passwords. But often what happens is that a password that you may have had from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, the likelihood is cyber criminals have potentially hacked a business and organization, and they may actually have your email address and password. Make sure you think about the accounts that you've got across your working day, your home life, and try and utilize as many passwords or passphrases as possible, so that if one does get stolen, captured, they don't then have free roam over every single account that you've got. And when I say passphrase, that's key. A password is okay, can be difficult to remember, but a passphrase is simply a sentence that includes the spaces, includes the punctuation, and is actually easier for you to remember. So where possible, use a passphrase as well. One of the reasons that we end up trying to use passphrases is, you've been onto a website before and they said, make sure your password is at least 8 characters and it has a special character, an exclamation mark, and has a number in it as well. That's great. But when you do that, all of a sudden we end up with words that become really difficult to remember. When we get a passphrase of multiple words, can you think, you can immediately think of a phrase or a term that involves more than 6 words, right? But that 6 words has got multiple characters. By definition, then, you've got more than the 8. And what's happened is when you go with a password that's just a few letters, few words, its computer can hack that password relatively quickly. And the longer that password gets, the harder it gets. But the moment you go into a passphrase, all of a sudden, the computers just can't break through the number of characters. Try and also use the odd word that means something to you that doesn't mean much to somebody else. I was about to tell you what my special word was, but I'm not going to do that. But think of something that's unique to you. Don't just make a medley of your birth date and then your mother's maiden name and all of the obvious things. Try and make it a little bit unique. Anytime you can take advantage of, when we say multifactor authentication, it's just that ability to have more than one hoop to jump through when you're signing in. What it also means is if somebody else tries to log in and shouldn't, you get that little notification that says, and then all of a sudden you realize that something's up. Essentially, the mission that I end up having is to help anyone understand the subject of cybersecurity so that it matters, but then also so it sticks and we start to become more secure. The reason for that is that cybersecurity didn't matter that much to me, if I'm totally honest with you, until one day my bank account was drained of the money that was in the account. And I got a call from the bank saying something was up. And then it happened again. And I realized that I didn't really understand how that criminal managed to take advantage of me. And it was difficult because I needed to pay the wages, right? And I had to turn around to my staff members and go, I'm really sorry, there's going to be a delay on payment. And I never, ever wanted that to happen again. And then as I started to uncover, how that could have happened, I then started to understand some of the other risks that were there. For example, I spoke to another business owner who had lots of important information and data related to customers. And cyber criminals had locked him out of his own information, which then meant that he didn't have the ability to service his customers or to even ring his customers. And the value of his business was directly correlated to the information he had there. And then it started to get me realizing that actually this is an area that's really important that we understand. So as a result, I've now started to build a business and continue to build a business whereby we use immersive storytelling to break down the subjects that I have often thought were really complex, make them as simple as possible, but turn them into something that's really memorable, really easy to understand, and if possible, enjoyable at the same time.